Hello and welcome to WEC Talk, the podcast series from the FIA World Endurance Championship. I'm Martin Haven. In episode 3 of the 2021 series, we'll hear from a British racing driver who, after an early career in junior single-seaters in the UK, kicked off her US career with victory in her very first race on the streets of Long Beach. She's tested for Minardi in Formula 1, she's raced in Champ Cars and DTM, in A1GP and in Indy Cars, in Formula E and NASCAR, in Grand Am and IMSA, to name but a few. She is a fierce competitor who's coming to a World Endurance Championship race near you soon. My guest today is Katherine Legge.
Thank you. That was quite an introduction. I loved it. It made me feel old because it's a long list you had there, but it also made me look back on some very fond memories.
And although we haven't seen much of you in Europe, as we've just shown, you have had a hugely varied racing career. And that's one of the benefits of being in the States. There is so much going on, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I love racing in the States and I love racing in Europe. There isn't anything that I don't like racing wise, but there just seemed to have been more opportunity over there earlier on in my career. It's been actually probably one of the most diverse careers in motorsport because I haven't had any big sponsors or anything that have wanted to follow me around the world. So I've kind of done whatever opportunities have come my way. Maybe I should have been a bit more selective. I look back and think, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that or this, but no, I'm very grateful for the career that I've had and the people that have helped me and everything that I've managed to accomplish so far. But I still have a long list as well, like WEC being one of them.
Well, unlike most other world endurance drivers, you've already started racing in 2021. You raced with Earl Bamber Motorsport in a Porsche at Daytona and at Sebring. And in fact, your 8th Daytona 24-hour start was also your first race back since breaking your leg in Paul Ricard before last year's ELMS season opener. Now, that seems like a lifetime ago for us. How was it to be back in harness after that long period where maybe you weren't quite sure whether racing was going to happen again for you?
Yeah, actually, a lot of people say that maybe racing wasn't going to happen. Maybe you wouldn't come back. And I think a lot of people on the periphery, actually not even so much on the periphery, I know my team as well probably had doubts about whether I would come back. But to me, there was no doubt in my mind. I literally, the only thing that drove me to get better as quick as I did and kind of motivated me on a daily basis to do all the physio and everything else was I really wanted to get back in a race car. I really wanted to be ready for Le Mans last year. I think I could have maybe done it, but I don't think I would have been at my best, and it wasn't fair on the team to do that to them. So I wanted my first Le Mans start because that's one of the ones that has been eluding me to be awesome, and I wanted to go out and do the best job that I could do. So hopefully that will happen in the future. And when I got my legs better, actually before I got my legs better, if I'm honest, and I hope that the doctors aren't listening to this, but as soon as I got back to the States, I was coaching in Ferrari Challenge. And normally what I do when I coach is I go out and I do a lap. And so they have a reference and I can show them video and, all that good stuff. So I was in the wheelchair and I got out of the wheelchair and I lifted myself directly into the Ferrari Challenge car because as much as anything else, I wanted just to see whether I could still drive, whether it scared me, whether I think it didn't really scare me per se, but the thing that did scare me was not being quick. So I thought if I get back in and I don't have whatever it is anymore, then that's a scary prospect. So I wanted to make sure early on that I still enjoyed it, wanted to do it, and more importantly was fast. So tick that box. And then in Daytona this year, it was the first time I've really driven in anger, definitely the first race. And I was honestly a little bit worried because I thought, okay, after 24 hours, it's going to hurt, it's going to ache, something's going to be going wrong. Maybe I don't have the strength that I had, et cetera, et cetera. So I didn't voice it, but I was waiting to see, how much pain I'd be in. I can pretty much fight through pain, so I wasn't worried about that. But I did think I'd have a couple of twinges, and I had absolutely nothing. It was fine. And then Sebring, the same thing. And I think I did a triple stint at the end of Sebring to finish. So I think I proved to everybody that I am back and I don't have any issues, and I'm ready to go again.
Well, dogged determination has been quite a hallmark of your career, hasn't it? So yeah, it's good to know that still persists. And actually, it's dogged determination that took you to the States in the first place. Tell us that story, how your connection with Kevin Kalkoven came about.
That's a story from a long time ago. So I grew up racing go-karts, not from a wealthy family. Fortunate enough that my dad was able to fund my go-karting career, and then we ran our own Formula Ford for a few races, but didn't have enough money to do what I wanted to do, which was actually get to Formula One. And so I did a few races here and there, and then my parents went out to the States and went to a race out there, and my dad said, there's so much more opportunity out here for women in racing. You should try and come out here. And he got Kevin Kalkoven's details from Vicky O'Connor, who ran the Atlantic Series at the time. And so I called Vicky and I said, please, can I have a drive? And she's basically like, have you got any money? And I said, no, I'm a student. And she put me in touch with Lynx and James, and they were having a shootout for Indy Lights at the time. And I won the shootout in Phoenix. And so I thought, hey, I'm going to do Indy Lights. This was way back in 2004 when I did the shootout. Anyway, the funding for that program fell through. So I had nothing again, was disappointed. But at that point, I was like, oh, wow, the States are awesome. I'm going to go and race over there, and I'm going to be an IndyCar driver. And so I heard that Kevin Kalkoven was actually in England at Cosworth. He was buying Cosworth at the time. It's when he purchased it. And so I got in my car and I drove to Cosworth, and I walked in and I said to the receptionist, can I see Kevin Kalkoven, please? And I hated doing it. I printed out my resume and all the pictures I'd done and everything. And it gives me the EBGBs just thinking about it, because it's a really tough thing to do. You're going in there, you're meeting a very powerful, successful man who owns one of the best championships in the world, and you're trying to sell yourself. And as 20 whatever year old girl, it wasn't my strong point, and it wasn't easy. I was quite shy. So I sat in reception and I said, I just want 10 minutes. And I sat there and I waited and probably like an hour or two later, it felt like an eternity, but it was definitely an hour or two later, his daughter and his fiance at the time, now wife, came out and saw me and said hi, and who was I and what did I want, and probably thought I was a complete weirdo. And so I just told them my story and asked if I could see him, and they were like, hey, sorry, he's really busy doing all this super important paperwork. No, you can't. But leave your resume with us and we'll see. So got in the car on the way home, cried, I think, called my dad. I was like, they hated me and now I feel so stupid. And I think the next day or the day after, I got a phone call from Jim Griffith, who owns a Toyota Atlantic team, saying Kevin Kalkoven called us and he wants us to test you. And I was like, wow. That I never in a million years would I have imagined that. So I called my dad and I said, can I borrow some money to fly to America, please? And flew to Phoenix again, tested, and they gave me a glowing report. And Kevin said, okay, lady, you've got the first 3 races. Like, let's see what you can do in the first 3 races with this team, because you've obviously got some kind of courage to come and do what you did. And so I went out, and Long Beach was the first race and I won it. And so the rest, as they say, is history, and I'm eternally grateful to him, because he's the reason I'm talking to you right now. He gave me the opportunity to do Champ Car the following year. Again, another shootout for it, but I got the chance. And then from me doing Champ Car, that's when I got the opportunity to do DTM and then go back into IndyCar, etc., etc. So it all started with a very nerve-wracking meeting at Cosworth.
And in some way, that chutzpah, just the the barefaced cheek to walk into an office and ask for somebody you've never met while he's just because he's in the country, that alone marks you out as different from the average racer. And he must have seen, hundreds of racers' CVs and hundreds of proposals and so on. So, but then you've got to back it up, and you did, you tested well. And Long Beach, I mean, as a kid coming from the UK, a wet Snetterton or a snowy Alton Park, it ain't Long Beach. I mean, what do you remember about that weekend?
I remember being awestruck, honestly, like just this huge race with thousands and thousands of fans, and it being in Long Beach, which is just a really cool, unique setting as it is. I was just kind of overwhelmed by everything. It was awesome. Never driven on a street circuit before, obviously. Very new to having so much power in a car. I mean, up until that point, I've done maybe 6 or 7 races, like maybe 8 tops, but probably not, right? So it's like jumping straight out of a go-kart into a F2 car almost. And the competition that year wasn't that strong, if I'm honest. There was 6 good cars, so I was lucky I was with the best team and I had the best support, and they're the ones who got me that victory, because I lived with the team owners for a couple of months preceding that, and then the remainder of the season, and they helped teach me about the car, how to set up the car, what everything did. They would draw me diagrams of how the diff worked and everything. I mean, they were awesome, and so they talked me through everything and prepared me really well for it. I went out in qualifying. I remember driving Long Beach for the first time. It's still one of my favorite circuits ever, because it's so cool to drive on street circuits, full stop, but Long Beach is definitely special. And I remember as a kid watching like Nigel Mansell and people do it. So I was driving around and I was trying too hard, as you do on a street circuit when you've never been there before. And in qualifying, I crashed. So they take away your fastest lap. So I started from the back. So it made it kind of even more powerful, because I came through the field to win the race. And I just remember thinking it's just overwhelming and amazing and awe-inspiring. And if I could go back and relive it, I totally would, because it's probably one of the highlights of my life.
And then, as you said, you raced on in Champ Car with Kevin's team, PKV. You moved to Dale Coyne the following year, which was 2007. I mean, as you said, you've done a handful of Formula Ford races, a little bit of Formula Renault, 1 Formula 3 weekend, and we're talking, sort of 200-ish plus horsepower, to suddenly go to those enormous Champ Car beasts. I mean, those took a lot of hanging on to. So again, Long Beach on your debut, top 8. I mean, are you kidding me? It's clearly a circuit that works well.
Yeah, I had a very up and down season then, because I was learning, right? It was my second full season in car racing, full stop. So I was quick at some points and not others. I had a massive accident at Road America where the rear wing delaminated and fell off. But yes, I think I showed what I was capable of. It wasn't easy because those cars were so physical back in the day. Everybody was questioning whether girls would be strong enough to do F1 or a Champ Car. And I tell you what, the Champ Car back then was the hardest car to drive. You had no power steering. The kickback in the wheel was ridiculous. And just to hang on to the thing, your neck, everything, like it was brutal. I was in the gym 2 or 3 times a day, just getting ready for it. When I first tested it at Sebring, I could do 6 laps. And I mean, I could drive 6 laps. That was it, right? Like I couldn't drive 6 laps on new tires at speed, because the thing was ridiculous. So I worked my butt off to be fit enough and strong enough, and kind of underline the fact that women are, it's repetitive strength. So it's a lot easier for us than if it was outright strength. I think it would be obviously impossible. But I think I put that argument to bed, because I would get out of the car after racing 2.5 hours, and some of the guys wouldn't actually get out of the car. They were exhausted. So that was another challenge to overcome. And I wish I'd been given the opportunity to do more at Champ Car before they merged with IndyCar, with a good team, and really kind of make a career out of doing that as well. But unfortunately they merged with IndyCar, and they had Danica and didn't really want another female driver. So I came back and I did DTM, which was really kind of difficult for me. I definitely didn't do a very good job in DTM. It was quite political and difficult, and I think I just kind of failed at that one. But I've become a really good sports car driver, so we're all good now.
And you did actually, in your DTM career, race at Le Mans, not the full Le Mans, obviously. So
right. Yeah, that's true.
You have at least
There's that.
The big one is obviously still to come.
Yeah.
But you have raced the Indy 500 twice. So,
Yeah.
you know, that is undoubtedly one of the world's greatest sporting spectacles. What's that like as a rookie
100%.
going in wide-eyed and just completely confused for the first time?
Oh my goodness. It was, again, awesome, incredible, but it was a mess because that weekend it was, we started with a Lotus engine. And the Lotus engine at that time was so new and so far off the pace that we weren't going to make I think there was like 3 or 4 of us with Lotus engines, and we weren't going to make the field or the 110% or whatever the rule was back then. So everybody switched to Chevy, and so that was like a last minute switch, and it was all just a bit of a mess, if I'm honest. So we didn't know whether we were racing, whether we weren't racing, like what was going to happen with the engine thing, whether we could get an engine, like the engine would fit in the car with the loom and everything. So from what I remember, it was just massively stressful. I don't think it wasn't intimidating in any way, shape, or form, because I was so stressed at everything else that was going on, like auxiliary outside of the car, that driving the car was literally the easy bit. And I'll tell you one thing about Indy: if you've got a good car, it's a lot easier than if you don't have a good car. Like, the guys at the front are working less hard than the guys at the back. It's crazy, because the next year I went there with Sam and Sam's team, and I had a great car, and I enjoyed it so much. It was the best experience ever, because the car was, like I say, fantastic. It was glued. It was easy to adjust the car inside the car with all the settings that you have. It was just exactly how it should have been. Unfortunately, I brushed the wall and ended it for everybody. But that was a really cool experience, and one that I want to repeat. And I keep saying I'll go back to Indy, and we keep trying, but maybe next year.
Well, and it's nice that you've got the knowledge of what a Sam Schmidt Motorsport, a good car, feels like in Indy as well. So you know you've got that, and you know you can deal with it when you go back.
Yeah.
And then after Indy cars, endurance racing called, and the oddest endurance racing car really ever, the DeltaWing. I'd almost forgotten that you were part of the DeltaWing program from start to finish in the WeatherTech Sports Car Series. So. Yeah. So you had that prototype experience when it ran, and that wasn't always. And then since 2017, you've been a GT racer. So successful times with Acura. You raced Lamborghini last year, and now in a Porsche. So you've got plenty of different marque experience, and all of that goes into the tank, doesn't it? It teaches you something. Every day is a school day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think there is no substitute for experience, because, you know, as you get the experience, it's easier to set the car up. It's easier to make less mistakes. It's just easier to call subconsciously on that wealth of experience. And I got mine over a lot of years, whereas a lot of these young drivers get it in a much shorter time because they're racing twice a weekend, or, you know, they're doing 20 race weekends a year, etc., etc. So, yes, I think I'm absolutely probably the best driver that I've ever been now because of that experience. But actually, the DeltaWing, funny you should say, it helped to mold me as a good driver, because what it taught me was how to do car development. So we worked on that car for, what was it, like 3 years, I think. At the beginning it was atrocious, and it, as you said, it didn't run and it was bad. But then the last year, you know, we got it better and better and better, and it really did handle a bit like an Indy car, you know, cross between an Indy car and like a P2 or a DPI. And it was really good at the end. You know, we led Daytona, we got it dialed in. It was cool. It was a really neat experience to be part of. I loved Dr. Panos. He was amazing, and you know, just one of life's characters. And he taught me a lot about a lot of different things. Actually, I just really enjoyed his company, and he was passionate about racing in general and created a lot of opportunities for people. So he will be always very fondly in my heart. And yeah, it was frustrating at times, but it taught me how to develop a car. And then when we got the Acura, I was new to GT racing, and but we had to develop the car again because that was brand new. So then I learned from people like Andy Lally, who is an American sports car kind of staple, if you like, how to set up a GT car, and I helped to develop that to where we were winning races and going for championships as well. So that was really cool, and I really enjoyed both of those, if I'm honest. And then the Lambo thing was really only one race, unfortunately, because after Daytona last year, COVID hit, and then I broke my legs, so wasn't able to do more, and that program kind of fell to the wayside. So being back this year with Porsche and IMSA and then Ferrari, obviously, and WEC is really cool, because I think if you had like a supercar list of all the cool cars you wanted to drive, I can tick the boxes out. I've raced them all.
Well, that's a really good point, because when you come to World Endurance, you'll race for Ferrari. In IMSA, you're racing a Porsche. And that's the perfect deal for a racing driver. You know the pros and cons of the two prime cars in each category. So when you're battling a Ferrari, you know where his weak point is. When you're racing a Porsche, you know where his weak point is, and you know where your strong points are. So, you can't, that's insider dealing. You can't get better information for shaping up against rivals in World Endurance.
Well, I don't know about that, because it's a GT3 versus a GTE car, but I'm going to take that philosophy into Spa next week, and I'm definitely going to use it to psych people out. There you go.
And the other thing, of course, is you can help it to kind of psych up your teammates, both sides of the Atlantic or across the globe with WEC and in IMSA. It'll be all female teammates, because you'll be racing in IMSA with Christina Nielsen, and in WEC with Rahel Frey and Manuela Gosner. So you've got a really unique season shaping up, which I don't expect too many people have ever done before.
No, I know. It's really cool, actually. So a lot of years ago, I joined the FIA Women in Motorsport Commission, because it wasn't just about me and my racing. It was about trying to help other girls get into racing, because there is a massive discrepancy on the grid, and I totally believe in co-ed cars as well. But I think that, and that's all I've done, right, for the majority of my sports car career, is race with boys up until we did the Caterpillar car in IMSA a couple of years ago. And I did it then, and I said, okay, it can't be a gimmick. We have to get the best female drivers, and we have to go out there and prove that we can race against the guys. And, we're just another car on the grid that can also win races. And it just hasn't, it's a really tough one, because we're out there trying to make a statement in a way, and trying to get more female interest, and trying to start something. It's a legacy in one way, because the more young girls that see it, the more they believe they can do it, and the more visible it is when it's all female. So we're trying to make that successful. And unfortunately, on the other side of the pond, we weren't able to win any races in 2018 with the all-female lineup. So it's still eluding me, and I'm still pushing for it. And I know that Iron Dames, so Deborah Meyer is obviously the head of Iron Dames, and it's her dream and her passion, as well as Rahel and Manu and Michelle. So we're all pushing for that direction in Europe and WEC and at ELMS, and we are doggedly determined, as you can tell from my career. It's that's kept me going, to make a success of it and to win races and championships. And so we're also helping other young girls up through the ranks and the paths of car racing, and hopefully we do make a difference, and we can prove that it can be successful. And then hopefully one day in the future, we don't need all female cars or all male cars if we don't need to make a statement, because there'll be as many girls as there are boys on the grid, because racing is literally one of the only sports in the world that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're black or white or female or male or whatever it is. So hopefully we can underline that and drive that point home.
And I think you're right. We're at the stage, I think, where hopeful young racing drivers or potential young racing drivers, if they don't see it, they don't know that they can do it. And that's the thing, isn't it? If they see women are racing, then they go, oh, that's the thing we can do. You think back 20 years ago to the start of the real growth in women's soccer compared to how many kids now, male and female, are getting into soccer. It's much more even because it's something that they have seen on TV, like an Olympic sport. They understand that it exists, and motorsport hasn't really had that. And that's part of the legacy that you're all creating at the moment. So you can be an inspiration, you can be an example, you can help advise, but just the fact of being in the spotlight on TV as a woman racing, it provides that little catalyst. And some girl somewhere will watch that and go, that's what I'm doing. And she'll be sitting in somebody's office, refusing to leave reception until they see her. And that's how it all snowballs, isn't it?
Absolutely. And hopefully that little girl also makes it to F1 that entices other little girls to do the same thing. It's just the same the whole world over. But with it comes a lot of responsibility too, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to fail, because if you fail, all you're doing is underlying people's negative connotations of what it is or it could be. So you almost have to make it successful and competitive for it to be effective. Otherwise, you're doing the opposite, I think.
Yeah, you could well be judged more harshly because, of course, if you don't win the race, there's probably 30 other men who haven't won the race either, but everybody focused on the fact that one man did.
Yeah.
Now, in endurance racing, unlike single seaters, it's a pool of knowledge, isn't it? A pool of experience, a pool of information. You actually actively are supposed to like your own teammate and help them, unlike a Formula One garage. And so you're now in that position where you've got experience that you can use, Rahel, and so on as well. But what about more experienced drivers? What advice did you get from Mark Webber?
Actually, yes, Mark's been great. So not really any driving advice, but he reached out to me after I broke my legs and asked me if I needed to know anything, because he did break his legs in exactly the same way almost. And so he was great because I had so many questions for him about it. Like, why am I feeling this? Why isn't this happening? Why is this taking long? How does this work? Should I have this out? What should I do about that? And I'm sure he got rather annoyed at me at the end for pestering him. But honestly, it kept me sane. And I'm very grateful to him and a number of other people who did the same thing. And it was those people who get you through it. And I feel like if anything happened to anybody else, I would do the same thing, because then you know that you're not different and you're not going through anything that anybody else hasn't been going through, and you will come back in the mental side and the physical side and everything else. So honestly, I didn't know Mark before that, and he's just a super good guy. I mean, obviously I had a lot of respect for him and he was one of my heroes growing up, but it was just it was really neat. And you see who the good guys are and who the bad guys are and everything when something like that happens to you. So eternally grateful.
And you're back and you're fit and you're healthy and you won't need to bother him for that particular advice. but
I probably could actually, because he's a lot fitter than I am. I see him doing all these rides and I'm like, wow, it's impressive.
Yeah, you've got his number. He almost always answers. So from here, we head in a few days to Spa, then to Monza. Now, you have raced at Spa. It might have been in the dim and distant in a Formula Renault car, but what about Monza? No experience there at all, I don't think.
Nothing, no. Yeah, Spa was in a Formula Ford. I think it was like, okay, now I'm aging myself. So it was 99 or 2000. And I was very, very young. I was 4. No, I'm kidding. And yeah, Monza, nothing. So it's almost like I'm going to have to relearn Spa, right? We were supposed to do it on the simulator this week, but that didn't unfortunately happen. So I have videos programmed on my laptop, and I'm going to go old school. Yep. And I'm just going to watch old races and onboards and stuff like that. So learning Spa, luckily we've got a 2-day test, and then I will do the simulator for Monza. So there's a lot of new races actually.
Yeah.
I did drive Bahrain in the P2 car, so I kind of know that one. Let's look at the others. What else we got? Portimao, I've never been to either.
Oh, Monza. You're going to love Portimao so much.
Yeah, everybody tells me I'm going to love it, and the area.
Yeah, Absolutely. And of course, the gorilla in the room is Le Mans. You know Sebring, Daytona, you've done Petit Le Mans, of course, Road Atlanta like the back of your hand after those years with the Paynos Group and with the DeltaWing. Yeah. But what about Le Mans? It's got that reputation, hasn't it, of being a very special racetrack. Are you kind of silly excited to get there?
I am really excited if I get the chance to do Le Mans, but I don't know whether I'm going to get that opportunity or not, because I think Michelle Gatting kind of got there first. So it might not be me this year, unfortunately, but I will definitely get there next year if it's not this year. And it's an exciting prospect for anybody. I mean, as a race car driver, it is like the bucket list, right? You've got Monaco, you've got Le Mans, you've got Bathurst, you've got Indy, you've got Daytona, you've got Sebring, etc., etc. So it's at the top of that list. So I literally can't wait. I know the track by racing it on the sim, but never been on the full course. I've been there to watch, but I literally can't wait. I did think about running people over with golf carts just to get that opportunity, trust me.
There's dogged determination and then there's Dick Dastardly, and that's a fine line, isn't it, really?
I haven't gone there yet, but I'm not saying I never will.
Well, Katherine, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Let's hope that the weather in Spa is kinder to us than the snow we had last time out. We look forward to finally getting this season underway and can't wait to see you out in the car.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the chat. I really enjoyed it.
That's it for this episode of WEC Talk. My thanks to Katherine Legge for spending time with us. Until the next time, stay safe and thank you for listening.